I've never had to advertise. I don't worry about growth. It comes naturally because growth is easy. But if you're growing 10% top line, but you're also growing 10% on expenses because you're bringing on 10% more team members for every 10% more clients, you'll never get to where you want to get. I wanted to have above average margins for an agency. What I started putting together was a formula for how are we going to create more margin in the business.
You've transformed your existing company and grown it 50% without adding headcount in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Pat Dillon, founder and CEO of Wise Digital Partners. It's good to see you, my friend.
You too, buddy.
So I've known you forever and I've watched you go through multiple different businesses. Today, Wise definitely fits into the love it, good lifestyle, great business category, but I've seen you go through several others as well. From a company called Deal Current through iterations of different marketing agencies. Fast forward to today, where you've got 30 full-time team members, hundreds of clients. You've worked with both huge brand names and also now a ton of small businesses. All right so far?
Yep, for sure.
So as a starting point, you've worked with all these different companies. What is a really undervalued marketing tactic today that people aren't taking advantage of, big or small?
I would say it doesn't matter the size of your business. If you have a physical location, like you have an office or you have a retail location or you serve a local market and you're working from home even, there's an undervalued place that people put on directory listings. Those are all the places online your business information appears. So we think of our, Google business profile being, the place online where our business information is your name, your address, your phone number, your NAP data, right? Well, that's one directory. And for a chiropractic office, a dental office, a construction company, a digital marketing agency, a restoration company, an accounting firm, really any type of business that serves a local market in any general sense, that could be a city, a state, a nation, you really need to have your business information consistent and accurate across a large number of directories. Otherwise, Google or ChatGPT or any engine that people are trying to find your business through will think that you are not in business. You could have the best website on the planet. If you don't have your directories in order, you will not get full credit for being in business.
How much does that matter for a non-local company?
Still a huge percentage, like even for our e-commerce companies, for example, which have no footprint whatsoever and sometimes are just drop shippers. It still, makes a measurable impact when we do that directory cleanup. And it's almost immediate. I was just talking to a huge new mortgage client that we brought on in LA, greater area. And, they serve all of California and 4 other states. They have an office, but their clients would never come into it. One of the first things that we do for any business when we bring them on board is we immediately begin cleaning up and building more directories. And they got like a $15 million mortgage deal out of it last week. And we know for certain that's the only thing that we did because we just kicked off the engagement. So you would not believe how much impact it can have. And it's like one of the simplest things you can do. You can do it on your own. It's just, you need a software platform and you need to know how.
Love it. Well, I know that as we dig into this conversation, AI is going to be a huge through line. And there's this whole story behind how you've transformed your existing company and grown it 50% without adding headcount in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Before we dive into that story though, what is one of the most unusual use cases of AI that you've seen in the last 18 months that's left a big impact that other people would be like, oh shit, I didn't think you could use it that way, or that hasn't occurred to me?
So right now I'm going through a legal dispute with a client and
fun.
It's like the worst. I mean, luckily, I've had digital marketing agencies, 3 different digital marketing agencies, served over 1,000 clients over the last 12 years. I've never had to sue a client. And this is a situation where I think I might sue this client because it was so egregious what they've done. They stole all of our work. They denied any of it being done by us. It's all provable. We've got 350 hours of proven work, hundreds of emails and dozens of recorded calls. And it's complete nonsense. But, I've got a pretty strong background in business, legal, I've been around the block before, started 15 companies. I'm not too worried about my ability to handle the situation well. And I'll rely on my attorneys, which are great attorneys that have been with me for 10 years when I need them. But I at the very beginning of the dispute, I put everything, all the historical work that we did, all the historical emails, correspondence, all into a project into ChatGPT, and said, I think, we've got an issue with this client. Here's all the context. Please read this over. And, I put it in deep research mode and let it go. And then I said, okay, now here's the email I got from the client. Let's formulate a plan. I've worked with it all along the way, and it's probably saved me $10,000 in legal fees and is helping me now get to a resolution with the client, which I think is not fair in my favor. I think I'm giving up what I would certainly win times 10 in an actual lawsuit. But I'm in a place where, fine, I could just walk away and move on. It remembers more than any human can. Now that it has all that information, I could go to my head of paid media who did 12 projects with them, my project manager who's worked on 55 projects in one sense and 145 projects in another sense. And I could go to my head of accounts that's worked with them on all, for 5 months. And if I put all 4 of us in a room, ChatGPT still knows more than all of us do together, and it's more accurate. And so we're using it in a sense for like our training and learning wikis as well. So we put all of our account manager training and documentation and Q&A and, even past recorded calls and stuff like that we know our account managers were 100% accurate in that recording for that client, right? And we use that to say, hey, you're going to be an AI account manager trainer now. Only go off information that we give you. Don't go and seek your own information because we haven't vetted it. And now our new account managers can go get trained and ask questions with the AI solution instead of bugging the head of paid media, the head of SEO, and the head of design, and all these expensive people who are busy doing their own things.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get back to AI because I know that you've got huge use cases internally and externally with it. But I want to rewind the clock a little bit here. So, I grew up with you in Cutco eons ago, and you were one of the first people from that era that jumped into entrepreneurship and starting their own company. You moved to San Diego. You started Deal Current, which was a daily deal website. This is which didn't shake out, I think, the way you wanted it to, but I think it's a great story because it's really applicable to a lot of sort of trendy businesses that are moving today. Can you explain what Deal Current was and why you jumped into that?
Yeah, and to make it more confusing, I came out here to start with another guy from Cutco too. Our first company was called Collar Free. It was a crowdsourcing fashion company.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
And then, it was doing well. We were, making our way into retail stores. Yep.
Same thing though, right? So Collar Free was also a print on demand website.
Yeah. So,
or did it transform into that?
It transformed into that when we patented the software. Yeah. It was a fashion brand. We recruited designers from around the world. They came onto our website, kind of like Threadless out of Chicago, but it went into when you submitted a design, it went into contesting software that we built. That was a homepage for our website. But, the economy crashed about a year into the business model. And we were just getting into Nordstrom and Urban Outfitters and all these big retailers. And, the housing market crashed, right? So somebody reached out, an agency actually reached out on behalf of a client and said, hey, we want to buy your software. Our client wants it. And we found out the client was Sports Illustrated. So we said, it's not available for sale, but it's available for licensing, which wasn't true at all. We didn't have a licensing, solution, but we knew we could build it as quickly as it would take to get through the legal paperwork with Time Inc., which owns Sports Illustrated, right? So then we had a software product, and that was called Artistic Hub. And Artistic Hub found very fast success with media companies who wanted to drive more website traffic through an engaging contest living on their homepage, which we embedded into, TV stations and radio stations and newspapers. Well, as the economy was recovering from, the worst recession since 1929, right?
This is 08.
Yeah, 08, 09, yeah. Media companies were trying to combat this company, which had changed its name from The Point to Groupon. And we knew, this is how we're going to help our media clients who were, we found we could double the website traffic of a radio station website that's been around for 20 years in literally 30 days. And they came to us and they're like, well, what do we do with all this traffic? You sell advertising, you dumb shit. But they didn't, their advertising products were really terrible. It was like those, screen peelovers and screen takeovers and all that annoying shit that today, like, don't do that. He said, well, this business is really innovative in a sense that, like, they don't charge for advertising. They just charge when people take action on a deal or a coupon or whatever, right? So we launched what became Deal Current, and it was the first private label version of Groupon. And so over a period of about 6 years, we helped 800 media companies develop a competitive program to combat Groupon. It turned out to be about 20% of the daily deal market of publishers. We had
for clarity, you said the first private label version of Groupon, but this was not Groupon being white labeled. This was a competitive platform that you were white labeling for people.
Yeah. So like, and SEO is the backbone of how we were getting our name out there. So when you type in daily deal software, our product would come up. So Deal Current was a white label daily deal software platform, mostly for media companies. A lot of entrepreneurs used it too, to like create their own little daily deal program in Chattanooga or whatever. But, so it was a platform where a publisher could create their own daily deal program, publish it on their website, do all the email, we do all the transactions. So all the transaction flowed through us. And then we cut, the splits to the advertisers and the publisher and all that stuff. What we found in that business model, what I found in particular was we ended up with about 50,000 small businesses as clients. They were going through the platform. I went out and developed national relationships with businesses like Omaha Steaks and Travelocity, and then it became a daily deal network or an ad network. And so, anybody could publish a deal into the platform, and then anybody could in the publishing ecosystem could pick up that deal and show it on their website. So even if you sold 2 deals, but the network sold 2,000 deals, your site shows 2,002 deals sold. So, but it was a race to the bottom in fees, and I ended up hating my clients. The clients were publishers. During that period of time, America lost 75% of its publishers. That has real impact today, right? Like all the stuff we're seeing with Jimmy Kimmel and all this stuff. Well, we lost 75% of America's voice, independent publishers, radio stations and TV stations and newspapers that couldn't figure out how to make the world, their financial world work in today's new model, in the digital era. And so, we helped, cobble some revenue together for them for a while, but we knew they were dead. And oftentimes it was like, you could see that their business was failing, but they were trying to keep together for as long as they could. And that wasn't a client I wanted to be hitched to. I want to be with clients that are on a path to win.
So for clarity, the term publisher is a sticky one because in different places in business, it means something different.
Yep.
So in this context, and you talked about agencies, I think, as well, but in this context, what does publisher mean?
Audience owners. So like a TV station, a newspaper, a radio station, they own audience. They're publishing content for that audience to listen to watch, or to read.
And in this case, specifically legacy. And so when we talk about legacy media, we're talking about small local small local TV stations or radio stations or newspapers, et cetera.
Well, but also on the big scale as well. So we were the daily deal operator for NBC Universal, the owner-operated markets. So like New York and, Atlanta and San Diego, and there's like 10 Ono markets.
But those still exist, whereas a lot of the other publishers, in this case, might not, because they couldn't exactly. So when you said 75% collapsed, I wanted to outline the notion of like TV and radio in particular, because those ones disappeared. The the smaller NBC locals, ABC locals are still around, right?
Well, yeah, a lot of the smaller affiliates are just gone or got gobbled
Yep.
up and then shut down and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that. But okay, so as that happened, you saw the publisher market eroding and 75% of that market disappeared because that media outlet didn't make sense with the new model today, or they didn't translate into the new model well today.
Yeah, it was essentially they just didn't know how to sell to today's advertiser, right? Because today's advertiser at the time was starting to gravitate towards, paying for a click, right? So paying for them to come on their website. Well, if you think about like driving down the road and you see that billboard, well, you're sort of paying for like every car that drives by, right? I just want to pay for the guy or gal who's driving by who actually needs a personal injury lawyer right now. And you can't do that with traditional media. And that was the problem with their model. And so, paid search and paid social, but then Groupon, like you're paying for the person to actually come in, even though they're coming in at a discount. Well, I didn't have to pay to get that in their hand, essentially, only when they transact. And I'm willing to do that because I'm acquiring a new customer. And you could work out the math and figure out a way to really make it work. Now, a lot of advertisers weren't sophisticated enough, and we provided training to the publishers to be able to sort of fix that. But, I think in the end, the point is like, we ended up with 50,000 small business clients. And I worked out into the agreement with the major publishers like NBC and Clear Channel and all these guys that if we wanted to provide products or services that you didn't provide, we can sell them directly to your advertiser. So NBC brings me, a local chiropractor, and that local chiropractor needs a website or SEO. I could go sell it to them, and I could call them and say, hey, you just, cashed a check last week. Go check out the name on it. That's my name. I signed that. I'm NBC's partner. And they've told me, they've asked me to give you a call and see if you need help on your website or SEO, those types of things. So there was
That's
like an easy
bridge.
Yeah, it was like an easy way to launch a digital agency. So that was Lightpost Digital. We had 40 clients in the first month. And I think we signed like a total of about 800 or 900 clients in a couple of years, franchised the business nationwide. And I think like fell back in love with my roots of like small business owners. My dad was a small business owner in an accounting firm. My mom owned a graphic design firm. And, I think my team, my partner, everybody involved with Wise today really appreciates working with small and mid-sized business owners because, when we make an impact or we create 50% growth or double your growth for a couple of years in a row, like we get invited to your weddings and bar and bat mitzvahs and birthdays, and like we're part of the family now. And
I want to talk Wise, but the transition from all these things, right? So starting with a clothing line that rolls into Deal Current, that transitions into Lightpost. You had a friends and family round to fund this initially, right? So as you're going through this, one of the things that is interesting to me as a bootstrap entrepreneur entirely is anytime you bring on money, you have some sense of, if you have any conscience, you have some sense of obligation to your investors, right? How did the transition between those things look, feel, and work to the investors? So like, you gave this fluid path of the logical retrospective narrative, but in the moment with Deal Current, all your investors are like, wait, what's going on?
Right.
How is that interaction with the investors?
Yeah. And, that's where, in the end, the investors in the first business never made their money back. There's some, something to be said about, I have kind of in a way paid back quite a few of them, just personally, or as a benefit of the future businesses that have, engaged in and stuff like that, like help their business, that type of thing. We probably did what I would never do again, which was we kept the investors on the cap table from the first business as it iterated into the second, into the third. And we ended up with this really messy cap table where Deal Current, which had now raised, true institutional capital from, a family office, an angel group, and true VCs, they're looking at our cap table and it had like 60 little investors in it. They're like, what the fuck is this? And, that I would never do again, because what we should have just done is said, hey, there was risk involved here. It didn't work. We're really sorry about it. We tried our best, but we have to shut this business down. And in hindsight, I would have done that. But as like a new entrepreneur who's raising money from your grandpa and your best friends from college and your brother and your mom and your dad, like my partner Jimmy and I didn't have the heart to say that we lost all your money. We tried, but the reality was no one could have predicted the fall of 2007, 2008. And
Right.
well, some did, and they made a lot of money, but most people didn't see that.
Very few.
Right. Yeah. So I think what we really should have done was taken an honest stance and said, hey, we got to shut this thing down. Instead, we kept it alive and kept iterating. And, in a lot of ways, I think that destroyed my life for quite a long period of time, because I was like trying to make this thing work that was clearly not working.
Mm. In retrospect, how do you know when to pull the plug?
Yeah, I don't know. That's how much grit do you have? That's an individual question for every person, right? And what I found out is I have a lot of grit. Like I'll just keep trying and to make it work. But at some point, when it's destroying your sleep and it's destroying your health and it's destroying your habits and it's destroying your ability to, go to that friend's wedding that you want to go to, or those types of things, I think that's when it's time to just throw in the towel and say, this is not working. Let's try something different and start fresh. Because that's I think my biggest regret was like, why did we try and make it work for an extra 2, 3, 4 years when it was so clearly not going to work? And to be fair, I put a lot of pressure on my business partner to shut it down. And if you're positive and smart people, something's always going to happen that's going to make it look like, oh, this is going to work, right? You said it in a previous podcast that I was listening to recently, toxic positivity. And that was us.
Love that. Love that phrase.
we were like, in our mid-20s, and we're like, we can conquer anything. It was like all balls and no brains, and we'll just keep getting there. So like I think my partner and I met 4 or 5 times over a couple weeks to shut down the business. And then all of a sudden we got this call from Sports Illustrated. We're like, no, it's going to work. Look. And they never fucking paid anything. Like we ended up paying them to get it going.
So you got roped in by the allure of the brand, and that drove, so it was sort of a tail wagging the dog situation.
Well, I think that, I have a lot of friends that have started big SaaS companies and big companies of all sorts, where you do kind of pay for that first marquee client. And, the fact that we had Sports Illustrated as our first client in that business helped us then go out and get, I think, about a third of the NFL teams. We brought in Warner Brother Records as a client. We started working with the artists under their label. We got Disney. We got a couple really big clients. So, the fact that we could say, hey, who else works with you? Well, Sports Illustrated was our first client. And they're still with us, by the way. So, that did really help.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think there's no question. I think that, and actually, I probably heard this or learned this from you through that era, is if you're willing to work for a major client for free or at a heavy discount as a case study, you get this crazy borrowed credibility from doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody else knows the economics of the situation. They just know that Sports Illustrated is a client of yours.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was worth it in that sense.
Would you do it again that way?
I wouldn't do again a business where I'm so hamstrung to any client or any industry. Like even in the digital marketing agency, a lot of people say, oh, niche down, work with one industry. I think that's a terrible way to develop a business like this, because like we were really, really strong, for example, in mortgage, and then the interest rates went to hell during COVID and the mortgage market died. 80% of mortgage companies went out of business in 12 months. So I think you don't want to, you need diversification. And I think when you're working with big brands, there's like a lot of agencies or insurance companies or accounting firms or law firms that work with a bunch of big clients. And it's like, well, what happens when that key client goes away? So like when I started Wise, I sat down with my team because this was kind of like my third go around. I know we're kind of like moving around, but I said, we will never have more than 5% of our revenue associated with one client. Because I don't ever want to be in a place where like if that client left, I'd have to lay off people. I don't want that stress for myself, and I don't want my team to ever have to think about that worry.
So that concept, I think surface level makes tons of sense. Practically, like when you talk about, where the rubber meets the road, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Do you, when a client starts growing, like in my head, when a client starts growing, I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to go get a bunch of other small little clients or a bunch of other clients to diversify. But in practice, is that how it works? Or do you actually throttle the big client?
We don't really try to throttle the big client. And we want to keep those big clients around for a long time. And historically we have some clients that have been with us now for 10 years because they've kind of like just followed me along from agency to agency and they'll never leave me. So for example, we got like years ago, we got our first $10,000 a month client. That was like 3 times what all the other clients were paying on average. And it looked like, wow, these guys are really going to grow too. They ended up growing from, 10 grand a month to 25 grand a month. So I said, okay, well, I thought about it like you and me from a sales background from Cutco, most of our friends, right? Like, let's just go out and get 10 more $10,000 a month clients, and then we don't have an issue.
Yeah.
Then I have another 100 clients that I'll pay 3 or 5 grand a month, right? So that's what we've been doing. Is we just if we see a client getting big, we go out and get a bunch more big clients. And
got it. Get into aggressive sales mode. Adjust your time structure, how you're doing things, and say, we need more focus on sales right now.
Yeah, and for me, like practically, I have a team that does the work. I'm not responsible for deliverables. I'm generally not on client calls. I don't participate in that. So if like I have the benefit of like being able to go lay at the pool every afternoon and swim and having a nice life and all that stuff. But if a client gets really big, then I know it's time to go to work for a little while to replace what could happen if things go wrong.
Well, let's talk about that transition. So Lightpost Digital, also a marketing agency, the transition to Wise, you had a parting of ways with a business partner. What was the transition to Wise like? And how did you approach Wise differently than Lightpost? Both agencies, what's the difference? And how did you think about it with this go round?
That was a difficult time. And I think you remember, I had a partner who wasn't doing well personally and mentally was not in a good place and was dealing with some addiction issues and ended up leaving Lightpost in a very abrupt fashion, in a very scary way. And the board brought me in to turn around things, immediately brought me in as interim CEO, kind of brought me back into the business because after I actually left the business, I was already running a janitorial company and doing another thing as well. And so I had developed as a licensee of Lightpost, 70% of the company's book of business. So I basically own 3/4 of the company's revenue. So the board brought me back.
We got to back out here. So tell me Lightpost structure. How did you end up with that structure? What was Lightpost overall structure?
So DealCurrent, we sold the company. And when we sold the company, we kept Lightpost Digital, which was an agency that developed as a division of DealCurrent. So it was a digital marketing agency that had a small number of products and services, like we did websites and we did SEO and we did Facebook ads or something like that. And we built the company up as a licensee model. So agents could go out and get trained to sell Lightpost Digital products and services in whatever market they were in nationwide. So we ended up with about 12 licensed agents, Miami, New York, LA. I was in San Diego. I went to my partner and my investors and I said, guys, if this thing's going to work, somebody needs to go out and be the poster child of how to do this, right? How to develop a referral network and get clients in a local market. And I'm like, nobody's going to do that better than me. I'm going to go do that. So I'm firing myself as president of the company, and I'm going to become what we called a digital director of Lightpost. And I went out and started developing, a book of business. And over time, I developed the majority of the company's book under my own licensee arrangement. So technically I was getting like an earning or a commission off of all the accounts that I brought on board. It's funny, there was only 1 month in 4 years where the other 11 licensed agents sold more than me combined. And I was on vacation in Europe for 6 weeks during that month. And it was actually closed. So, I developed a really good relationship with all these clients. I brought them all in. There was a lot in San Diego and elsewhere. And when I got brought back in and I saw what a mess my partner had made of the business, I came to the investors and I go, guys, I don't like, this is going to take a lot of work. There was a lot of promises that were made to clients that cannot be fulfilled unethically. And there's just no way to get it done. So they started looking for a merger opportunity. I didn't think that they knew what they were doing and would find an appropriate, merger company. So I went out and found one on my own too. They ended up going with theirs. I told them it was going to fail. It failed in 24 hours. So they gave me back the business on a napkin for $1 and a rev share. And I went forward with a merger. Unfortunately, that really did not work out. That guy ended up being kind of a crook. And I took back the business after about 9 months and rebranded it Wise Digital. So on day one, I had 50 clients and my team of 4 core people who were like a strategist, my top SEO guy, my top ad guy. But during that merger period, I met my now CTO. My head of design ended up getting like a lot better training there, and a lead developer. So those people all came over as well. And, by the end of that first year, I think we had a really good core team of about 8, and we got it up to about 60, 70 clients. And, we were sort of off to the races. And from there, we saw, more than 50% growth for 5 years. And, so we knew what we were doing. I knew what we were doing. The team knew what they were doing. And I think we were good at this thing at Lightpost, which was like traffic, SEO, and ads. The merger company was better at websites, which was, I thought, the piece that we were missing as well. So when we got together, we combined and we were now pretty great at everything. So when Wise started, we had a better foundation for the services that we offered. The CTO,
why didn't that merger work? What happened there?
The guy running that company was a crook.
Oh yeah, that's what you said. That's a funny word. It's like it's 1920. Who says crook?
Stealing from his clients, stealing from his employees, just really unethical practices. Had a huge, personal flow, like all that. Just it was awful.
Yeah, that's delightful. So did that dissolve entirely?
Yeah, that business failed.
Okay. So that business failed.
That business was left alone, but it ended up failing. Yeah.
Got it. And so Wise, brand new, but you pulled a bunch of staff from the previous ventures.
Well, they came on their own. Yeah. And my team left with me because I brought them in. They left with me. And the clients that were still there, he had lost a lot of clients, or they lost a lot of clients. And the ones that stuck around because of my personal relationships. But, we started, I think the point was we started with a really good base, a foundation of revenue, a great team. I didn't have to take a salary, for a long time. And I got to reinvest in the right ways, in the right places, with the right team and resources and all that stuff, and get started, finally with a business that I owned, I controlled. I didn't have any investors. I didn't have any partners calling the shots. I always wanted to, set up full health and medical and dental benefits and all that stuff. I wanted a 401k. I wanted profit sharing. I got to do all of that right from the start.
So from the outside, if you look at this path from, again, clothing to Deal Current to Lightpost, bunch of investors, the cap table's kind of a mess. You're rolling money from one to another. You've got different people involved. Wise is a fresh start. But what you just said was I didn't need to take a salary, et cetera. And the gap that I think we missed there, because if you just look at this, it's sort of like things are collapsing along the way and getting a bunch of learning lessons. But along the way there, it sounds like you invested in some other businesses. You said you had a janitorial company. What allowed you to start Wise from scratch and not have to worry about money as much at that point?
I was doing some other things on the side. I had, when I became like a licensed agent of Lightpost, I was making a lot of money. And so I was investing in the stock market. I was investing in a couple other just like, regular retail investments. I started a janitorial company with a partner who owned another janitorial company, but we wanted to do it in a different market. That was starting to make money. I had a ton in savings as well. So when sort of shit hit the fan with this merger, I had already been working and preparing to launch this thing the right way, one of the key things that I did with the team on day one is I said, hey, if we're going to do this, I want to do it right. And here's the rules for how we're going to do this. I can't be responsible personally for any client deliverable. I have to be out and go and create growth. I'm going to go get clients. You guys figure out how to get the work done. That some of the other rules around like no client will ever represent more than 5% of revenue, that type of thing. There's a lot of things that we're going to say no to, so that we don't bring in problem clients that bring down teams and agencies and all that stuff. But, I was in a place financially where I didn't need to take a salary, which I think is where every business owner should be realistically mentally when they start. And then you shouldn't think about taking a salary for probably the first 2 years. And if you can't do that, you probably shouldn't start a business because shit's going to go wrong. The economy is going to collapse. The administration is going to do something dumb. To this, to that. There's all sorts of things. Like I'm starting a whiskey brand right now, and tariffs have made our costs in Ireland go up 20 to 25%, like within months. So we have to make adjustments now. But luckily, I don't need to make money from that. So I was in a good spot, is the point.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's super helpful context for people. Okay, so fresh start, restarting Wise, you've got some team from before, so you know that you've got the capacity to deliver product. You also come with a book of business, a group of clients, but you've gone through this agency model before. Why did you decide to specifically focus on SMB at this point?
I think back again to the types of clients that we like to serve. Supporting Time Inc. or Sports Illustrated or the Dallas Cowboys or these kind of clients that we had in the past. You're just a number. You're a cog. You're replaceable. When you do really well for a couple of years for that business and it's a Fortune 5,000 or 500 company, all of a sudden that marketing manager gets replaced and that the new person comes on with all of their existing relationships and they want to shake things up, right? They want to prove their value or their worth. So they fire all the existing relationships and then bring in their own buddies. I didn't want to be in that place. We've been there before. And, when you're working with a small business that's doing 3 million a year or 5 million a year and you help them grow to 10 million or 20 million a year, they come back to you. They start the next business with you. They invite you to things that, show that they really appreciate what you've done for them. And you find that even though there's a lot of terrible things about working in small businesses, like emotion and financial instability and changing direction and all this stuff, right? I think you still end up with a neater and more fulfilling relationship when things go well. And fortunately for us, 80% of the time things go really well.
I love that. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure you make it to beyondamillion.com and check out the newsletter. It is a lightweight way to get the best tips, tricks, and strategies from all the guests we've ever had. So all the big names and some of the people you've never heard of but have killer things to teach you, go to beyondamillion.com and subscribe to the newsletter. You're not going to be disappointed. Okay, so bring me to present day. We were texting yesterday, and one of the things, and I mentioned this at the onset of our conversation here, but one of the things that has been a big focus for you in the last 18 months, and I think a lot of the world, though they've applied it very differently, is the application of AI.
Yep.
So in the last 18 months, you've heavily implemented AI in your business to get 50% growth with no additional headcount. What are the pillars of AI application inside of your business today as of, we'll call it October of 25?
Yep. We were already doing a lot of advanced SEO techniques going back to 2021, 2022. So I think the large language models, as they were like basically digesting everything on the internet, right? Like ChatGPT was being trained on information for years prior to launch. It launched in, I think, November 22. So we were already kind of ahead of the curve, and I knew right away like how impactful this platform and this type of technology was going to be in marketing, like in getting more clients. But it became, and we were already using lots of AI solutions like from years and years ago. I mean, Grammarly, for example, in the copy department or things like that. But once we started playing around with ChatGPT and later on, the other solutions, Gemini, Perplexity, whatnot, we saw also the efficiencies that created the business. So what I started sort of putting together was a formula for how are we going to create more margin in the business? Because growth is easy, like getting more clients and just, getting more business is sort of like cakewalk to guys like you and me, but, and a lot of our friends, I should say too. But, if you're growing 10% top line, but you're also growing 10% on expenses because you're bringing on 10% more team members for every 10% more clients, well, you'll never get to where you want to get, right? And I wanted to have above average margins for an agency, to prepare for an eventual exit, in 5 or 10 years or whatever, and just to have a better life and be able to, test more things and invest in more places and all that stuff. So, I think part one was putting together a plan for improving operational efficiency. And there was a bunch of things that we did there. First thing that we did, and this was probably like middle of 23, so about 6 months after ChatGPT launched, we put together an AI task force. And at the time, we probably had about, I don't know, actually a little bit more people than we have today, full-time US. But we looked at our, let's say, 20 on staff in the US, and there was clearly about 4 or 5 people that were much more inclined to using AI to better, their workflow and their department and stuff like that. So we grabbed a couple of those people and said, okay, you're on a task force now to help drive the direction of how we're going to use AI responsibly in the business. And those were people that we met with pretty regularly, like weekly or monthly, as we started formulating the rest, which I think the next one was developing budgets for every department to use and to test AI solutions, to figure out what, solutions were right for copy or SEO or design or that type of thing. Then we launched a company-wide AI contest. And that was actually the beginning, I think, of this year. And, the idea there was to bring together everybody in the company with their very best ideas for like what AI, did for them in a given month. Like at the beginning of the call, we were talking about this, like with the legal dispute. But, somebody came up with a solution for, prototyping, designing, and creating a website in a matter of hours, where it took us 16 weeks before. And it wasn't great, but it was good. Could that help us shave off 2 or 3 weeks of a typical build? Could it shave off 30 or 40 hours that we could pass on some savings to the client? Could it help us find blinders for some of our strategies? Next, I think we came out with a public-facing AI statement. So, how we use AI in our business responsibly, how we don't use it just to write all the copy for a website. Looked like plagiarism at first, but, the AI models are actually, it's becoming a little bit more clear that you can do some of that stuff and do it responsibly and get good rankings and all that stuff. And that stuff's changing. So we had to make the AI statement flexible enough to be our constitution for the future, right? Then recruiting. all of our recruiting now involves questions around how do you use AI in your daily life, in your work life? How familiar are you with X, Y, and Z platforms, all that type of stuff. What's crazy is we've had, I think, 7 hires this year. We've had 9,000 applicants for those 7 hires. So now we use AI in the recruiting process. So we actually have an AI platform. We've gone through several now that publishes the job post, accepts all the candidate applications and resumes. It itself actually goes out and schedules the first interview, conducts all of them simultaneously. So like in 2 or 3 days, it'll conduct 200 or 300 interviews for a position. And then
what does that look like? When you say it conducts the interview, what's the mechanism?
It actually reaches out to the candidate. The AI agent itself reaches out to the candidate, schedules a time to talk, conducts an AI interview with a fake person, right? Then it, based on custom parameters, it puts them into a spreadsheet with a recording and scores them on the likelihood of success in that position. And then helps us weed down, 300-400. We've had like 900 applicants for some positions. So it'll like weed that all down to something that we can actually work with. So maybe it gets it down to 40 candidates where we can really quickly go through and listen to the recordings at like top speed. And, we're playing with the platform based back and forth a lot. And we've gone through, I think this is the 3rd platform we've used like this. I mean, there's like funny stuff that happened in the beginning where like the AI agent just like stops talking. Like the candidate's like, what's going on? Is it over? So it was like, it's getting to a point where it's indispensable for us because we have so many, being on the Inc. 5000 list a couple years in a row and all of the 5-star reviews across Glassdoor and Google and everything else, and the amount of information we have out there on our YouTube channel. And it's just, there's a lot of interest in working here. It's overwhelming. I mean, we would have to have a team of like 3 to 5 full-time in the HR department to handle the volume of people that want to work here now. So that's another area where it's just made a big difference.
Well, I want to dig into the mechanics of that particular thing. But first, I want to highlight the kind of the process here. And one of the big steps was an AI task force to see what we could do. And you mentioned a contest to try to figure out the best practical applications of AI. When you say there was a contest, were you incentivizing that for the whole staff? How much time was allocated to it? How did you actually structure that internally?
So yeah, big cash prizes. Everybody on the team, including managers, myself, my business partner did not participate, our CTO. But I can't remember what the cash prizes were. They were like sizable enough where like this is interesting, and anybody could submit, I think, 1 to 2 ideas of something that they incorporated into their role or their department using AI. They had to show the problem, the solution, and the impact. And then it went into a leadership vote. So all of the ideas came back into a spreadsheet. And, we decided one of the winners, I think, was the project manager, actually, who brought to the table this new solution that helps sort of very quickly map out a sitemap, a workflow strategy design for a website. And we've actually been testing that as a way to maybe spin up great websites faster.
What are the other strategic or tactical elements that you've changed with Wise in the last 18 months to get you to accelerated growth and maintain profit?
Yeah, so account managers were able to handle a certain book of business, right? Maybe that's number of accounts or amount of revenue or that type of thing. And it seemed like they're always kind of capping out. Well, part of that's just like the amount of time they have. So when a client asks a really complicated question that involves multiple disciplines, like SEO, website, CRO, paid media, well, they would have to go to all these different team members to get those answers and then compile. They'd wait for those answers, right? Then they'd compile those answers. Then they'd write an email to the client, and the client would wait days for, an important but complicated question, the answer to. And now they can use AI to get it done in 20 minutes because, they can put in really great prompts that are vetted by the department and disciplines, and that's really helped. I mean, it's cut down. Sometimes, it would take 3 hours to answer a question, which in most cases we probably don't get paid for that time, because
Sure.
we can't charge a client for 3 hours to answer a question that they think is simple. And so, that's helped in a big way, just making certain, roles and departments more efficient and more profitable. On the flip side, revenue. So we've been pushing forward the envelope and having AI platforms suggest us more to the types of clients, industries, products, and services that we offer. And so, a lot of what we were doing on the SEO front really fed well into the large language models. So when ChatGPT launched, we were already getting suggested. But, in 2023 is when we started seeing our first deals that we know, because we asked the prospective client, where'd you find us? And they would say Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever. And we started signing those first deals in 23. Well, by 24, by early last year, probably 30 or 40% of our pipeline was due to people who found us on AI solutions. This year, two of our largest contracts in the history of the company are people that found us on ChatGPT. And so, we're using AI to improve the bottom line, but also very much improve the top line too.
So your life has been driven by SEO over the course of decades.
Yep.
What are the tenets of SEO that have changed to both show up in the search engines and also the AI engines?
It all comes down, I think, to content, but the way you structure content and the way you submit content has really changed. 3 or 4 years ago, you could put together a local website for a chiropractor, a dentist, or whatever. And you could have, I don't know, let's go back 5 years. You could have a website that's like 15, 20 pages where every page has 500 words, and you've got a proper sitemap where all the services are broken out correctly on their own pages, and you've got a hub page and this and that. And you set up directories and you get some good reviews and you start ranking really well. Can't do that anymore today. Each page maybe has to have 1,000 to 1,500 words. It has to have, perfect metadata. It has to have structured data and schema markup. And, you've got to go well beyond the basics on directory setup. And you've got to have a really consistent program for getting reviews and having really recent high quality reviews constantly coming in. And it's just like the baseline of what you need to do is so much higher. But when it comes down to like what's always been there, it's always been having great content. It's just like, what does great content look like today is different, and it's going to continue changing. And the be everywhere thing, of course, is really important. You can't ignore social media, even though I don't feel like for a lot of businesses, it's ever going to get an ROI. Like it's just something we have to do to look alive. But having a really well built out Glassdoor program, right? That's important for recruiting, and recruiting helps, serve up continuing growth. And so you can't ignore certain platforms or disciplines today like you could maybe 5 years ago.
So from an SEO perspective, you talk about sort of the schema and the structure and the sitemap of the pages. And the key thing that I heard that was different was moving from, limited content on a page to more, 500 words to 1,000.
Yep.
Structurally, I look at our traffic, and in the last year, we've had probably a 40% decrease in traffic from SEO.
Yep.
And it's all moved over to the AI engines.
Yep.
What are the mechanisms that get you into the AI engine that are the same or different than what shows up on search? Because AI, for example, ChatGPT is going to suggest 3 things, and Google is going to give you 50 links, even though nobody clicks on the latter 45.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that there's an SEO conference going across the street. I jumped into a talk yesterday just because I wanted to take a break from work, and they were talking about something that we've been talking about internally for maybe a year or two, is just the length of content on a page. And that's where it's like tough for, the agency client relationship is, let's take a client we're really big in the accounting space. So tons and tons of accounting firms and everything related to accounting, like M&A activity and wealth planning and stuff. So let's say we built a website 4 years ago for an accounting firm. And let's say we went a little bit over the average and we did 750 words per page. And let's say we did everything right from an SEO standpoint 4 years ago. Well, today, because, let's say 40% of people now have switched from using Google and only use ChatGPT and Gemini. I am that case. I don't really use Google anymore. Probably 19 out of 20 searches I'm going to ChatGPT for first. And, what large language models is looking at they're looking at the entire page. They don't really care about the design and the layout and some of the basic metadata. They don't care about that stuff. They care about the words on the page. And so if, let's say you started an accounting site last year, incorporating all the new rules that we know about large language models, and compare that to the client who was created 4 years ago before large language models, well, this one's probably going to outrank if you consider everything else constant, right? Like both firms have good directories set up. Both firms are getting lots of reviews. All of those other signals outside of, just the website, right? So that's where it makes it a strain on the agency relationship is your agency might be coming to you and saying, hey, listen, we got to change a lot of structure on the pages of your website. Yeah, the one that we built you 4 years ago, because today's different. And I think there's a lot of clients who are like, nah, I don't understand. They're just trying to sell me more stuff. No, it's not at all that. We're trying to keep you ahead of the curve. And unfortunately, what happens is, a lot of times the client just points to the agency as, well, they're not working anymore. No, they're trying to actively help you, but you have to kind of look at it like a rebuild almost in a lot of ways. And if you're not doing that in your business every 2 or 3 years, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I mean, we have clients that we brought on board with their existing website that haven't let us work on or build a new website for 6-7 years. That's crazy. Like, would you let your salesperson go out and sell the same for 6 or 7 years without any retraining? No way in hell. So I think business owners need to be a little bit more realistic about how often they're taking a really comprehensive look at doing over what they've got set up. What you're experiencing is I think not unique in that you're seeing a lot of traffic
certainly not
drop, and you're seeing it come from and there's a switching, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can get both. You just have to make sure you're reinvesting that same percentage back every year into your business from a marketing standpoint, and then its dollars just get allocated differently. That's where I think we're really good with clients is we really focus on developing a continual growing ROI. Let us be in charge of how the money's deployed.
So you've gone through a bunch of different iterations. I love the application of this stuff today from an AI perspective. What advice do you have for a brand new entrepreneur starting out today?
Get serious about your brand and get serious about, how digital is incorporated into developing the brand. Because that's the thing that'll pay off more than almost anything else you can do in your business. For me, the ROI that we've had from our own digital marketing efforts for Wise Digital has paid off more than anything I've ever done in my career as an investor. I think there's a lot of digital agencies, for example, who are like, wow, I'm competing against all these other digital agencies. Well, do you really have that little faith in what you do that you don't think you can do well at digital marketing for a digital marketing firm? And we just started out very different. I said, when I launched the business in 2019, I said to my team, I want to be the largest SEO client of the firm on day one. Next year, we're going to double that SOW. And the next year, we doubled it again. And we did that for a couple of years in a row. And I've never had to advertise. I don't worry about growth. It comes naturally. And I think if a business owner just understands it's going to work and find the right partner, one that understands your business and you like working with, like that's all really important. But, double down, like really, really jump in and don't look back. Because I think too many times business owners are like, well, we'll try it and see if it works for a year. If clients say that to us, we're like, we're not going to invest in this relationship.
I got to go. I get it.
Yeah.
Pat, I wish you were here in person. I'd love to get more time in. Got other questions, but I also am at time here. So why don't we do this? Why don't you tell us what your ideal market is and where people can find out more about you and about Wise?
Yeah, we work with a lot of different types of companies, but professional services and home services are the ones we have the highest success rate. Like, we never lose accounting firms or law firms. We never lose plumbing companies or restoration companies. Go to our website, wisedigitalpartners.com. If you want to book a meeting with me, meetwithpat.com.
Nice. Meetwithpat.com. I love it. Awesome, man. I appreciate you carving out time.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Beyond a Million. If you liked the podcast, you should probably click the bell and subscribe and maybe leave a comment below. That helps other people find us and keeps this flywheel going. And the more people that find us, the better guests that we can get on the show. So if you could take 30 seconds to do those things, it would be amazing.